This is Lynn Fraser from the Kiloby Center for Recovery. Part of the Radical Recovery Summit, I'm interviewing Mani Chacaby today. She's a First Nations artist. She's a two-spirit, and she's had a lot of personal experience with recovery from alcohol and abuse. And today I would like to just talk with her about that, and I'd like to get your perspective on that. So why don't you go ahead and introduce yourself, and then we'll start.
Okay. My name is Mani Chacaby. I am recovering since 1975. I've been sober and I'm enjoying life now.
That's awesome. I read your book, and in your book, there was a lot of trauma, especially in your early years.
Yep.
And do you see that that's directly linked to the addiction?
Part of it is addiction. The other part is trying to recover the sexual abuse and the abuse, childhood abuse.
Mm-hmm.
I had to learn to let go of all that. I had to forgive my people. Because if you don't forgive, then you still carry that. So what I did in I worked on my sobriety first. I lost my kids, I think in early 1975. Well, part of 74 and 75, because it was Christmas of 74 that I lost the kids and they took them away. And then I got kicked out of my place and I became homeless, and I lived on a boxcar then. Part of 74 and 75, I stayed on the street. I became a bum, drank a lot, lost my kids, didn't have no place to go. My best friend had let me in because she didn't know what she was going to do with me. Maybe she was afraid I might get her mom drunk or something. Because her mom was also a drinker. But I survived with, there was 5 of us that lived in a boxcar.
Mm-hmm.
That was our space. And C and section people knew we were staying there because there was a lot of, they were carrying a load of hay. So we had hay all around us, and that kept us warm. We had a bucket where we were told it's okay for us to use that when it gets really cold. And he told us there was nobody else allowed there except me and 4 other people. They knew this guy. His name was Willie. He was an older fella, and they knew him, they liked him. He probably was part of the old CN place. Maybe he had worked there before. So they let him stay there, and with his little gang, that's what us, 2 other women, me and a man. There was 5 of us. We all each had jobs. Me, I was to go and steal food. Mm-hmm. At corner stores like bread and Click and whatever I could get my hands on, which I did.
Mm-hmm.
Then the others went and did something else, and then the others brought the drugs, anything to get our hands on. We didn't care anymore for bottles of wine or beer. We drank anything that made us high. Yeah. So that's how it was.
That's quite a journey from that and being just so consumed by the addiction.
Yep.
And then now you're a respected elder, you work with youth. Mm-hmm. Can you talk a little bit about what it is that you're doing today and how, just to bring your past into that, how did that all kind of come together?
Well, came together. I've always worked with youth, even when I was not respected elder. There was always something about me and the young people. when the runaways, I would tell them, like when I sobered up and became sober person, picked up kids from the streets, and the ones that were kicked out of home, I would bring them home. They would stay at my apartment, I mean my house in a basement. Sometimes I would have 10, 12 blankets on the floor and pillows, and they would come and crash there. And then I cooked bannock early in the morning, and they would take off with bannock and water, and that's how I fed those kids.
Mm-hmm.
They hung around with me a lot. They liked my energy, I guess, or whatever. There was just something that they liked about me. I liked them because I didn't want them to be like what I went through. And I understood them too when they were being abused. From home, I know what they were going through at home. You know, they have alcoholic parents, and some people would pick on them, and you know, and then some of them weren't even drinking. They just needed to get away from their home environment they were facing. And one day, sometimes those kids, you know, one day they stole at the corner store and brought a whole bunch of stuff for me. I had to take it back to them and call the police and told them that they didn't mean to. They just wanted to thank me. They were let go. They didn't get no charges. I made them face up their problem. You know, and then you know, little by little, I started to lose my kids. I think around 1975, 76, 1978 or 79, I moved into a different place, and then I started to lose the kids. They started disappearing. They went to Vancouver, some of them. I heard from Vancouver, and I heard from them different places where they were, and some were growing up and some had kids. I met a young fella came to look for me here in Thunder Bay who lived in Fort McMurray and came to visit me and thanked me personally for the life that I helped them with.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
I'm sure you made a big difference in those children's lives.
Yeah. And, you know, and I was trying to stay sober. I would get up 6 o'clock in the morning, take my kids to the sitter,
Mm-hmm.
then go to work, and then go to meeting and go to training. And they were teaching me how to talk English. That's what was going on. And then I translated the big book, Alcoholics Anonymous, big book, with a couple other people that were translating.
And your heritage is Ojibwe and Cree?
Yeah, Ojibwe Cree, yeah. My grandmother was Cree, full Cree. My grandfather was Ojibwe and French.
Your grandmother was very special. I loved reading about her in your book.
Yeah, I love talking about her.
Yeah.
She was a beautiful woman. You know, she wasn't, even though she was old, everybody says she was old because she was, her skin was hanging down and she was fragile. She was totally blind, but she looked like she could see almost everything. How she taught herself how to be able to see things without seeing things.
Oh. Hmm.
And her hearing wasn't too bad. Like the doctor said, she's really old. She's just got broken bones in certain places. Like she had a hunchback.
Mm-hmm.
She broke that bone when she was in the ice when she was traveling. But she mended herself in her own way.
Mm-hmm.
She was a medicine woman.
So one of the things that they say about trauma is that if a child has even one person who really sees them and loves them and gets them,
Mm-hmm.
that's enough to save somebody. And it sounds like that was your experience with her. She really loved you and cared for you, and she was your person when everything else was falling apart around you.
Yeah, she was there. I had to save her too when she was getting old, like when everybody was getting drunk in my house, in her house. I had to take her out of my house, her house, and put her in a shelter behind. Like I created a place close to the outhouse area, but where they had a lot of trees. So I made a little dome place for her to go. I put her in there when everybody was drunk and fighting in the house. I would leave her. Always had this little bag of, I never see her with a purse or nothing, but it was always a handkerchief, big handkerchief tied up. That was her personal items. That's all she had.
Right. What did she have in there?
Well, she one day showed it to me when we were outside and everybody was getting drunk. I
Mm-hmm.
asked her, "What's in there, Kokum?" You know, like in our language. She says, "Oh," then she unraveled it, and there was a red Bible, and then there was a big ring, and then there was a necklace of some sort, old ancient stuff, really old. The
Mm-hmm.
ring, there were a couple of rings were really, really, really old, gold rings. And she said one of them was my grandfather, and one of them was hers. And she said,
Oh.
"When I die, you get to keep these," she told me. And I did lost them in my drinking. I had them for a long time. And then
Mm-hmm.
when I moved to the city, when I came to the city, I still had them. And then I lost them after that because of my drinking. I don't know who took it.
Oh, that's a shame.
Hmm. I
Mm-hmm.
didn't take it to the bar. I always had it in my home, wherever my home was going to be. I think the people I lived with in when I came back from when I came from Mumbabuka to Thunder Bay, my best friend, I think her and her family or somebody there might have taken it when I went missing in action because I was drinking.
Mm-hmm.
They might have taken that. I don't know. I'm not blaming anyone. I just know I lost it.
You lost it. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. There's
So
no
when did
really to blame.
yeah. When did you start doing art and painting?
Um, I was 9 years old. Did an art on my grandmother on a big birch bark with using ashes from the fire pit. I made her face really just exactly what she looked like. That was my first art. My stepdad told me this is what you can do, and then we went in the bush and picked up some berries and taught me how to mix the red berries and orange berries and the blueberries that you can't eat.
Mm-hmm.
He said you can mix those and put them as part of your art, part of red ink, part of shadow kind of stuff. So that's what I did with my grandmother's face. And and then I lost her. Well, I didn't lost her. Indian Affairs from her name was Mrs. Gowans. She came from Nakina, Ontario, somewhere from government. I don't know where, but they said Nakina. She came there and visited everybody at, because she was an Indian Affairs a woman, and she came to visit these people, us. And then she saw my painting. She asked me if she could borrow my painting to hang to show everybody at the Indian Affairs office, the oldest woman that she met.
Mm-hmm.
She was going to bring it back, and she never brought it back. She came. She said she forgot. And next time I saw her, she didn't talk to me. I tried to talk to her about my artwork. My dad, my stepdad told me just to let it go, let it be. That was my grandmother. That was my first time painting. And
Right.
little by little, I did some wee-gouache paintings and biting painting. You know, when you bite the wee-gouache, you make your little trails of different art. That's what I did. And then I quit doing that. Then when I sobered up, I started to do art again.
That was part of your recovery.
Yeah, that was my recovery. I
Right.
did lots of pencil stuff in my in a book about this big, one of those pages. So I wrote my journals in there, but they weren't really like writing the way I normally did. It's more like whatever I know how to spell, I would spell that, and then I would draw what I didn't know how to spell. And that's what those are the ones my oldest sister, burnt all of my talk, all of my paintings, all of what I witnessed. She didn't like it because she said, "You're exposing me and my family," she said.
Oh.
All of a sudden, I was no longer her sister. I was no longer anybody because my dad was he was my stepdad. He was my real dad. He married my real mom when my mom came back from sanatorium. And when she came back from sanatorium, she originally was in sanatorium for 5 years. I was born and made there. It wasn't sanatorium, it was a residential hospital. Then it became sanatorium later.
For tuberculosis?
Yeah, later after I had been, or it was before, they were making it when I was born to become a sanatorium. But I was born there before, while they were doing their residential. My mom would say they made her, well, the way she said this, they made her learn to speak English and learn to sing songs. And that's what she was doing. When she drinks, she could speak really good English and she could sing really well. She sang Kitty Wells songs and, maybe not all of it, but most of it. And then she sang other people's songs and played real good music. And when she was sober, she would never speak English. She always spoke Nishnabemwan, the language. Yeah, it's almost like she was ashamed of to speak English.
So in your book, you talk about when the people came to take the children in your community away for residential school, you were out in the bush.
Yeah, I was out hunting and trapping. What he said was, we're going to go out in the bush and go trapping and check our traps, see how much money we made, and maybe we can buy something nice. He said. So I was happy to go. I was always happy to go because I like being outside, working outside, and I like being outdoors person. Yeah, it was really, really good. And so when I went, then when we came back, I noticed the village was really empty. There was no sign of kids playing, no sign of nothing. I saw people looking in the windows. I said to my dad, "Hey, there's people looking in the window," and then they shut the curtains really fast. And then we go in the house. My real mom started to cry and scream her head off. And then she was mad at me for some reason. She got mad at me because my little brother went and my sister went. My stepsister went. Now, that was my dad's real daughter. She was older than I was.
Mm-hmm.
Took her. She went to Shinwalk in Sault Ste. Marie residential school. My little brother went to Macintosh. She didn't have any control where they were going to put him. He didn't last very long. He only lasted till he was 6 years old. He came back. He was skin and bones. He was almost dying. He had yellow jaundice and his face was yellow. His eyes was yellow and he was really ill and he couldn't speak a word. And my grandmother nursed him back to health and said that he was dying slowly, and he had given up his life. And that really traumatized him.
Oh,
Till
yeah.
today, till today, he's younger than I am. He always used to call me mom after my mom, our real mom died. Then I had to raise him and looked after him. And then my stepdad took off and went back to his community, I guess. I don't know where he went. He went back. He was crazy. He went drinking.
Right.
Lost my mom. He didn't have no reason to stay in Babaca.
Right.
I wasn't good enough to stay. Then my grandmother died first, and then my mom died 6 months right after. 3 months after. 3 months apart, everybody was dying. So I had no support after that.
And then your stepfather was drinking and then he was gone too.
Yeah.
Right.
And I was already married off to this guy that gave me kids and was mean to me after.
You know, what strikes me is the immense pain. There's so much pain and trauma of the residential schools and of the whole experience of colonizing a land that already had people in it.
Yeah, that was. I mean, even right now, people are still suffering. They're waking up, they're drinking, they're
Yeah.
talking about the way their life is or was.
Mm-hmm.
And they're brought here they end up here for,
Mm-hmm.
they're lost in the streets.
Right.
Right now, we got 2 youth missing, and they're not even talking about it in the media. But when other kids go missing, right away they're posted all over. They're all over the radio, the news, the
Yeah.
TV. When a First Nation goes missing, you don't hear about it until they found a dead body.
Yeah. Yeah, it's terrible.
It's sad. Like
Yeah.
last night, I only found out because this guy made an announcement. We had that missing murdered women's anniversary last night, and they were singing at the park over here. And that's when this guy made an announcement. 2 young people were missing in Thunder Bay.
I
And
hope they find them.
I hope they find them. They
Mm-hmm.
were young. They're young. But I mean, our young people go missing. There's no news about them until they're dead. And that's why they say, who's killing our native youth in Thunder Bay?
Right.
And I've been involved with the native youth and just any young people, not just native, even young white kids sometimes are attracted to me because of, I don't know who I am or because of, I think it's because of who I am. I just come out and speak in public and, now my book is out. And then I was in a movie called Fire Song. And then another short film done by Star Steen in Toronto called Older Than What. Then I was also in a couple of people from Inuit were doing the It's a play called, I forget the name of the play, and they came and did play at Buddies and Bad Times, and my friend recorded my voice and turned it into a rap song.
That's cool.
Yeah, and they use that as the opening.
Oh, neat.
Go through my either short YouTubes or short video clips, you'll hear my voice in one of those events.
Show some of your art as well. We can see that what's behind you is just beautiful there. You've worked in treatment centers, is that correct?
Yeah, I worked with, in 1976, I worked with, I went on training program with Smith Clinic. They put me on, the way it started was a guy from, he's a school teacher, his name was Walter, and he says, how would you like to get into the program? Because you can speak really good Anishinaabe. And the guy at the treatment center did ask me one time when I was there as a treatment person, like I was sober about a year. I went into that program to learn more about my sponsor said, I think it's a good idea if you went to treatment and you'll understand more about the program. You'll understand the 12 steps.
Mm-hmm.
You'll get a chance to talk about different things. I said, okay. So I went and then I met the director himself. He says, how would you like to come back and be a teacher here and help be a counselor and help us, because we're starting to have lots of First Nations coming in that don't speak the language. You can talk to people. You'll make a difference. I said, okay, no problem. So the program came. There was a 1-year program it's a trial. They were doing that just to see if they can employ a couple of people that goes for treatment. They were taking native people from Thunder Bay. There was about 4 from Thunder Bay, Fort Francis, Kenora, all around the area, Marathon. So they picked up a few of them that's been sober to train them. And I couldn't get in. I went to the employment insurance office, and the guy said, I said, I want to go into this program. He said, oh, I'm sorry, you can't. You're unteachable, he says. It's too late for you. You can't get in at all. You don't need to work there. We can't train you. We can't do anything with you. You're unteachable. So don't waste your time here, he says.
He just wrote you off.
Yeah. He had a red suit jacket on and, just really, his name was Henry. And I remember him so clearly, deadly clearly, that I made a decision. If I ever get into this program, I'm going to go back and see him after.
Mm-hmm.
So, and then I got in by chance, somebody from Fort Francis decided wasn't going to take, was a guy, he wasn't going to come. He changed his mind. So I took his seat. By the time they did all the paperwork, I was already well in the program 6 months later when the red tape go through.
Yeah.
So, and I was making 100% of all my mark because I worked really hard. And I wanted to learn so much like everybody else was. I wanted to learn English. I wanted to learn, just really learn. I really wanted to learn. And so when we finished the whole work, I went to see this guy. A year later, I went to see him. I already got hired at Smith Clinic. So I just wanted to do the paperwork. Took my paper over there, and I asked for him specially. And they said, oh, he's out for lunch, come back later. So, and I went back and I took my paper and slammed it on his table. I said, hey, find me a job, sign me up for a job. He looks at me, he says, oh, and then he looks at my name and he says, oh, oh, okay. And then he saw everything what I did. I said, I've been certified. Here I am now, find me a job, I told him. Just for the heck of it, I wanted to. And I want to work here at the Smith Clinic. He looks at me, he didn't know what to say. Okay, just a minute, he said. He went over, he says, just a minute, he said. Then he took off. Then another person came on. I'm sorry, I'm taking over his stuff. He can't talk to you. And I said, why? Because what he said to me a year ago, I guess that's what happened. I don't know, she said. But I'll do the work. I said, well, you don't have to worry about it. Just sign that paper, I told her, and then I'm already hired at St. Joe's. Oh, good for you. She was congratulating me and all that stuff. And what did mind if I ask you, what did he tell you? Why is he doesn't want to deal with you now? I said, because he refused me for a job for training. I said, he said I was unteachable. And I will never forget what he said. And he's got the same jacket on. Doesn't he ever change his clothes? I said, I was being mean. And then later on, I sort of forgave that and then said, okay, he was just trying to be the boss. You know, he was just trying to show his stuff to people.
That's
And
terrible, though, to hear from somebody that you're.
yeah, he was just prejudiced against me that, well, you're unteachable. You're too late now. We can't teach you. You
Yeah,
know,
yeah,
he did say that. And he
yeah.
saw me that way, that I was not teachable and I was First Nation. So I didn't do any more about him. People told me I should sue him. And I said, no, it's just a waste of time and energy. I could use my energy trying to help somebody else stay
Yeah.
sober and try to do something better.
Well, and that's why people are attracted to you, because you don't look at someone and write them off. You know,
No,
you see them as a human being who has, everybody has their own set of skills and wonderful things.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. That was then.
So you worked in the treatment center for a long time?
No, not very long. I left in 1980 because I ended up marrying this person thinking, oh, I'm going to get married. My stepdad kept telling me I should get married. Those kids are going to need somebody to help me to help to raise them.
Hard being a single mother. Yeah.
Yeah, he said, you shouldn't be single and you shouldn't, he just kept bugging me. And I finally thought, well, I'll ask this guy to marry me. I didn't even really know him. I liked him. He seemed like a nice person.
Mm-hmm.
I tried to get him and my sister together before, but then she was not interested and he was not interested. So, and one day when he was at our house, I came to visit and I said, hey, I have a question to ask you. And then he says, okay. So he was sitting at the edge of my bed and I says, hey, would you like to marry me? He looked at me and he says, oh, he falls off the floor and says, yeah, laughing his head off, right? Me marry you? And I said, what's wrong with that? And then he looks at me and says, well, I've never been married. I don't know what to do if I got married. Well, what we could do is we could get married. Give me your name and I'll give you my name, and then we'll become good friends. We don't have to do anything if we don't want to. You know, I could be honest with you. I could tell you something that you'll never believe me. And then he says, what's that? Well, I'll tell you after we get married. And then he says, okay, all right. I'm living in a treatment center. I like to get out of that place anyway, he said. So I asked him, he said, okay, 3 weeks later, if I'm okay, I'm ready to get married if you want to. So we did. We made a quick plan right away. We made a bunch of plans. And then we got married. And then he ran away after he took off to
Oh.
Winnipeg. I didn't know he went to Winnipeg to look for a job. And then on the job, then he says, hey, come to Winnipeg. So I had to quit my job and be there because he was my husband now. Then I told him that year when I got to Winnipeg, I says, well, I said, I can't really sleep with you. I don't really like to do those kind of things with you because you're not the right kind of person. He looks at me and says, well, I can pretend. I can be that person. I can pretend I'm a woman. I can dress up like a woman. He said.
He was pretty cooperative.
No, he didn't. He was just teasing me.
Okay.
But he had other things in his mind. I didn't know he had kids problem. I didn't know he was into kids and stuff, or young girl. I had a young girl. I had a young daughter, Joanne, my oldest daughter, and my son. And so I didn't know he was that way.
Oh.
I didn't know that until my daughter finally blurted out. But that's her own story, and I can't talk about her story.
Right. Oh, what a shame. Yeah.
So that's what happened. And so I left them shortly after. I came back home here in 1987. I went to Gay Pride in Winnipeg, but I disguised myself. I wore a Halloween costume in my face and head part of it.
Mm-hmm.
So somebody didn't know who I was. And I went to a secret AA meeting with gay, Winnipeg gay meetings. But I told everybody I was going to the symphony, which I did. Whenever I was depressed, I would go to the symphony and listen to symphony music because I love symphony music.
Mm-hmm.
I feel like I learned symphony since I was young, when I used to run away from my own house in Umbalaka, run into the bushes and stand there. And one day I met music there. That's how I met my music. I was standing there one day, I heard a big crack. This is going back to that time. I heard a big crack and I stood there in my little section man's outfit, like a little rolled up pants, and then my suspenders were on my shoulders, and then I had a little rain hat, a hat, a section hat, all spiked hat. It had lines in it and just looked like a CN person. I'm standing there as a little girl listening to the music, and I'm standing there. I heard a big crack. I stood and listened. And then I said to myself, what's that? I was really scared. I thought somebody was coming. And then all of a sudden I hear these big grass. And then I heard it trickle down there. And then I heard the leaves. And then I thought, wow, what a beautiful music. So I would just sit there and close my eyes. I didn't care if there was a monster going to come and eat me up. It was worth it. But it wasn't a monster, it was just the music in the bush.
Wow.
Yeah, it was so beautiful. And every time I wanted to run away from my home area, I would run into the bush and listen to that. The music was, and that's why I spent so much time in the bush.
Mm-hmm.
Everybody used to wonder why I was going in the bush, where I would hide, and I had a hiding place in a crevice of a big old tree, down tree, and then that when it fell, it became like a little place to hide. Beside it is a nice big rock, and that's where I used to go and hide.
Mm.
So I was in the shelter. Nobody knew where I was.
And you were safe there.
I was safe there. I was safe from the abusers, from other people. Yeah. Yeah, so that's how I lived my life that time.
Mm-hmm.
Then going back to my sober life, that's what attracted me to the symphony music was I would go and sit down at symphony music. I'd pay $25 for music I didn't even know who I was paying for.
Oh yeah.
It didn't matter.
You just loved it all.
Yeah, then I met Beethoven music.
Mm-hmm.
They played that, and then I made that guy starts with a T.
Tchaikovsky?
Yeah, I love his music.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah, a lot of that is beautiful. Yeah.
I have some of his old music, so
Mm-hmm.
it was
Mm-hmm.
good. I managed to survive.
And I know this is a bit hard to put in words, but what would you say is the most important thing if somebody is just starting recovery and they've had a trauma background, they're not feeling so good about themselves? There's so good reasons why we escape into addiction of all kinds. What would you say to them?
My first thing I would say would be get a sponsor. It's a man working with a man, young man. I would say get a young man and get a woman. I mean, like if it's a young man, I would say get an older man and an older woman, someone who's been sober a long time, who's been in recovery for a while, someone who looks really serious about the program. You know, you could tell the ones that look serious that are, you could tell, you can pick and choose. You can tell the ones that are say, you know, to me that would be my hint, saying the same old thing, but not really doing anything about it. There are some people like that. And my second advice would be to them, don't trust anyone in the program that's going to drive you home and says, I'll give you a ride home if you don't have a vehicle. Whether it's a young man in the program or young woman in the program or older, anyone that's just starting in a program. That's my advice to them. Don't trust anyone to drive you home alone. Make sure you always got a buddy system from wherever you are, or your best friend or someone to go with you at a meeting for a while until you're stable. Because I know what happened to me in a program. It wasn't very nice what happened to me in a program because I thought everybody was really following their program. And this is the person who's always been sober for a long, long time. And he did what he did to me, and it wasn't very nice. I could have charged him, but I didn't want to because, like I said, in my sobriety, I was working on me to take care of me. And forgiveness is very important to me in my daily journey of life. Instead of hating, resenting the person who done what they done to me, I know they're sick. I put them in a sick category. They're not, they might be sober a long time, big deal, but they're out there looking for someone to hurt. That's very vulnerable, and that's not, doesn't have very much to say for themselves, which was one of them. I was one of them people. That's what, the way I see that life. When I first walked into AA, somebody already pinned me and knew that I was someone easy prey. There was a couple of them people that was in sobriety that was like that. One of them was a doctor, and the other one was a regular member.
Well, and there's, you know, it's such an important point that when we're first getting sober, we're so vulnerable.
Yeah,
we really need the support, the connection, and yet not everybody's trustworthy.
So that's what I always tell my people. And I say to them, read the book, read the first 12 steps of the program, and then read the 12, what do you call it, the traditions. Learn those. If you can learn those, and you read them, even if you don't understand them, try and figure them out. And then talk to people in AA, but don't talk about too much that you're giving yourself to them totally, and they're going to run your life. Always have a caution light. You know, in the street lights, we have green light and red light, and then we have yellow light. Yellow light is to help us be aware what's around the corner, what's coming up. And that's how I use my program. I try to use it that way. And I know, like, when I was in a program, I got kind of bored after being in a program. I felt like I wasn't growing anywhere because whenever I wanted to talk about my real life, people would say, well, we don't talk about this here. You got to go see a counselor for that. When you're talking about if you're feeling suicidal, or if you're feeling you need to talk about your sexual abuse, and nobody wants to hear that.
Mm-hmm.
All they want to hear is your drunkalog.
Oh, right.
And I said, well, I'm not going to stay here very long. Then, you know, I started looking for God. And I started questioning my God and who my God was. And that's when later on in life, I began to know who my God was. And the creator that I believed in became so important to me. I put all my trust in my creator now, and that's what I do. She was always there helping me out, looking after me. Really, I do believe in something that I can't see, something I cannot touch, something I cannot feel. That is out there and moves into my body inside like I don't know. If something was happening, I'm a good responder for, if somebody was dying or somebody getting, I know how to do things, but I'm a little slow at fixing me. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I do.
I can't respond that way to myself, but I can
Mhm.
respond easily to somebody when they're getting hurt.
Mhm.
So, but that's what I mean. You got to really get to know yourself, and you have to get to know your maker, whoever that is.
Right. So forgiveness as it applies to ourselves
Yeah.
and compassion and kindness for ourselves. How do you work with that? There's so much shame.
Uh, Forgiveness. How do I work with that?
Well,
That
with yourself and with people that you work with, there's so much shame around being abused and around addiction and so much disconnection. People are so disconnected from themselves.
well, I look around me like I look at trees and their roots. How do they survive? They survive through the roots from another root to another root. And if you really look down and follow, and just stand there and imagine that one root, how many miles does that root go? There is always a connection from that root to another root to another root to the healing place. And the healing place is always in the swamps where all the medicines are. I always talk about that. If you go somewhere down a road and you see a whole bunch of little lakes and all that, that's where all the medicines are. Little pond of, for us, it's disgusting. For the Mother Earth, it isn't. That's their medicine. I remember when my grandmother one time, way back in time, and she said to me, if you ever get lost, which happened later in life, if you ever get lost, look at the animals and look at the things. And if they don't eat that plant, you don't eat it. It's harmful. And they check it out and they move away from it, then you don't bother with that. But if they're eating something there, then you will survive from that. They're they're sucking on their medicine, she said. Now, when I got lost, there was a deer that started to drink a dew from the leaves. And I remember I didn't have no water for so long. And then I look up in the in the leaves and I just grabbed one leaf and there was dew there and I drank that. Oh, it was so refreshing.
Mm-hmm.
And then the moss on the ground, I just suck on that. And I did, because my grandmother told me that was medicine. It'll heal you and help you. Yeah, I didn't, so that's what I would say about the trees. If you're stuck somewhere, when I got stuck, that's what I did. I looked at the trees. Now they're my counselors.
Mm-hmm.
They're the ones I talk to when I need to go out and dish out something and to forgive my people who ever hurt me. I have to forgive myself. I'm number one. I got to forgive. And then I got to ask the Great Spirit to guide me, to help me, to love me, to respect myself, to give me those teachings. And in our First Nation language, we have 7 grandfather teachings.
Mm-hmm.
One of them they never ever always add, you just assume to remember those, is forgiveness.
Uh, so
I
it's so foundational that they don't even actually say it.
yeah.
Yeah.
And
Right.
then I come along and I say it when I'm working with people.
Right.
Don't forget, forgiveness is so important. And my grandmother used to say, when you go in this life, there's 3 roads for you to follow, and it's up to you how you're going to get there. there'll be roadblocks everywhere you're going to go. You have to figure out how to get over to the other side. And one of them is a road from my belly, from my toes to my head, and then my head itself, and then my heart, and then my stomach. That's that belly to my head. You know, those are the three roads she was talking about. For a long time, I didn't know what road that was until I sobered up.
Were you drinking when she was still alive?
No, no.
It was
Well,
after.
yeah, a little bit. I was a little bit when I was, we're doing sniffing.
Ah, okay.
I was doing sniffing and yeah, I was sniffing and doing other stuff with kids.
What would she say about that, or did you talk about that with her?
About my drinking? No, I didn't say nothing to her about that.
So she didn't know about the sniffing or anything?
Oh, she probably knew what I was up to.
Oh, okay.
She just wouldn't tell me that. Say, I know what you're doing. Well, she did say that one time, but I didn't know what she was talking about.
Oh, okay.
I know what you're doing out there with the people, you know, with the young people. But you're exploring, she said. And, you know, to me, she must have figured it out, whatever I was exploring. I thought she meant I'm exploring in the bush, but she might have meant the other. You know, grannies aren't that stupid. It's blind and hard of hearing, but I think she knew what she was talking about. And I just didn't know that time. You know, now I know what my grandkids are doing. I know what they're up to. They think I don't know anything about drugs. You know what I mean? Right now, they think I don't know anything about drugs. They didn't know I was number one ahead of them before. You know what I
So there's a lot of people who die by suicide, especially young people.
Yeah. And that's why I got so interested in that, working with the young people.
Mm-hmm.
I just start walking the streets, like I hang out in the streets at the bus stop, start talking to people. I don't get paid for that. It doesn't really matter. I get paid by staying sober and by being loved by people. That's my reward. And that's what I like to give to them. I always tell them love is very important in your life. Even if you can't be loved by anybody, can you learn to love yourself? Look in the mirror and say, hey, I love you. I had to do it. And 5 years ago, I had to learn to look in the mirror and say, Minnie, I love you. I love you very much. You are beautiful and I love you so much. I had to, first I was pretending to say that, then it became real.
It's
And
true.
that's what I tell the kids. It becomes real after. Then you start loving yourself, like all the marks I have now in my body. I say, oh, this came from that injury, from that person, this person, and that thing, and you know. And I learned to love them. I used to be embarrassed to wear shorts because I have too much scars in my legs, and people would ask me, "What's that from?" You know. But that time I wasn't ready to talk about these things.
Mm-hmm.
Then I started to work on art. That's how my sobriety began. I started to work on art. I started to draw the pictures of my feelings. It became on paper, on my paintings. I started showing them in my paintings. I started to talk about them, not with anybody, but just me, myself, and I. I started to recognize, oh yeah, I know what that comes from, where that comes from. I'm gonna put my feelings there, my pain. And that's some of the paintings that I have comes from that.
So it's a way of tuning into what you're feeling.
That time, yeah,
Right.
when I was working on the pain. At that time, when I was thinking about my life, oh, when they were hurting me, that's what I put in there.
Right. And then it helped to release that?
Yeah, it helps to release that. because then it comes out on paper. It comes out in the canvas.
Mm-hmm.
And I can acknowledge it. And then I wrote it on my book, and that released a lot of it. I have a lot more to say, but I won't have any writers to write for me anymore. My friend who did the writing for me won't be able to do it because she's so busy and she's got growing kids now and she won't have time. I feel she's the only one who really could understand exactly. And I said to her, I want it exactly the way that I talk. I'm not in university. I don't have that kind of language where you put these words. And when people did read my book before it came on, before it became public, critics, the ones who read my book, to say, is that Mani talk? No, Mani wouldn't use that word. Mani is just, nah, it wouldn't be Mani. That doesn't sound like Mani, they would say. So that's how it happened. Everybody knows my language.
The title of your book is A Two-Spirit Journey, the autobiography of a lesbian Ojibwa Cree elder. And can you speak a little bit about two-spirit for people who aren't familiar with that term or what that means? What does it mean to you?
What it means to me is my grandmother used to say, Nija Jijak Yawa means Nija Jijak, there's two spirits in my body, mind and soul. Now, she told me that when I was 4 years old.
Mm-hmm.
And every year after that, she kept saying, reminding me every year, Nija Jijak Yawa, you're going to have a hard life. When she kept saying that, you got two spirits and you're going to have a hard life. I didn't really understood what she meant. I just gracefully took it and be happy with it. I had a beautiful name, Nisha Jijak.
Mm-hmm.
I didn't know what that meant. Then over the years later, when I found out, I think 2010 is when I first heard what it meant in English. People use it, two-spirit. Oh, that's what I've been looking for. I don't know what I didn't get before. Gosh, I used to say two-spirit before, but I didn't know that meant anything. You know how you try to put your head into that word and it doesn't match?
Mm-hmm.
That's how it was for me for a long time. For many years, it didn't match. Then I went to a gathering and then somebody said something about two-spirit gathering. And I thought, oh, now I know what that means. I'm going to take that name, two-spirit, number two, you know.
Mm-hmm.
That's so important. That's what my grandmother was trying to tell me what it was, what now I figured out. Now I know why she said I was going to have a hard life, because I had a hard life being gay,
Mm-hmm.
but being two-spirit doesn't mean, for me, it also means I'm gay and I'm a lesbian woman, but it also means that there's two spirits that's living inside me, which is a male side and a female side. And that explains to me more of who I am and what I am. Why I didn't want to wear skirts, and why I didn't want to be in a certain category, why I didn't want to be dressed up in different outfits or whatever people are wearing. I wanted to be comfortable.
Right.
How can I make myself be more comfortable and just be who I am? And why can't people just accept me that way? Why do I have to wear a bra? Why do I have to wear tight slacks? And why do I have to wear a blouse, not a t-shirt? Why it was against the law to wear men's clothes when I'm so comfortable in men's clothes?
I think that's one of the pleasures of being a lesbian is we get to dress in comfortable clothes.
Yes,
wear comfortable shoes.
Yeah, you can dress the way you want now.
So do you feel like that's more accepted now in your community, young people who are two-spirit, or is it still pretty tough for them?
It's still very tough. Up north is very tough. They come to Thunder Bay to come out now instead of going to Toronto or Winnipeg. They're starting to come out right here now. We have people coming out now. Like, and when they do the programs, this is where I come in. When they're out there, like missing murdered women, anniversary, they didn't acknowledge two-spirit. They just said missing murdered women. And this is where I come out and I open my big mouth. So don't forget the two-spirit women that were murdered. And so when we go march, I'll be walking around saying that, not to forget to march with the idea of having two-spirit right there too.
How would people get a hold of you?
Dr. Chacaby, for talking and conversation, I use Gmail for business. And when people want to come and ask me to go to another place to go and talk, then that's where they reach me, is through Gmail. That's just for business. For other things, I use Facebook just to meet people or get to know what's going on in the community. And it has, when you go through, it has a picture of Mascoby on my Facebook.
Well, and you've also helped so many people through your presence and being an elder and a healer.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And your book, where can people get a hold of your book?
A bookstore, and then University of Lakehead. Yeah, you can get it on Amazon and then online.
It sounds like you're still on a healing journey. Do you think?
I am still working on a healing journey.
Yeah.
Yeah.
People ask me sometimes if I think people ever completely heal from trauma.
No.
No.
We have our traumas. The main ones that hurt us the most is what we work on. Then we just let the others, and we start working on it a little bit at a time, and then things just gets better. We acknowledge them. Like sometimes we all have nightmare from something that hurt us. Yeah, just came above somehow, some reason for, we don't know why, but all of a sudden it was there, and all of a sudden you're back where you were before when it happened to you. So we've learned to, I've learned to start accepting that was just only a nightmare. That was just to bring me back where I was at.
Mm-hmm.
Not everything gets totally, you acknowledge them, you feel good about them, the ones you worked on, and then you forgive yourself, and then you forgive your abusers. That's the hardest work, is to forgive people for the pain they caused you. For me, that's the hardest journey, is forgiveness.
How do you work with that with other people who have hurt you?
I work with it by trying to see myself in them.
Mm-hmm.
Is that why they're doing it? Because they're in so much pain.
Mm-hmm.
They can't stand the fact that I'm okay, and they're in a lot of pain.
Right.
They're more pain than I am, probably. That's what I say to myself.
Mm-hmm.
That's how I convince myself, oh yeah, they're more pain than you are, Minnie. So let it go, and let the great spirit look after you.
Mm-hmm.
Learn to love them. It's hard to learn that, to love them too.
Mm-hmm.
Especially my kid's dad,
Yeah.
my kid's real dad. When I was asked to go and smudge him, I said, no, there's other elders that can do that. I don't have to be the one.
Right.
And why he wants you to forgive him? Why should I forgive him? What should I? He got to forgive himself. Can't expect me to forgive him.
Right.
Already forgiven him long time ago. I said, I don't need to go and forgive him. Plus, I'd be breaking the rules. The judge told us he's not allowed around me within 50 yards.
Right.
That was my good excuse. I don't have to go and see this person.
Yeah.
And so that's how we left it. And, that's how it goes. You have to just let it go and let it be.
Mm-hmm.
That Manitou is very powerful once you let her in your life, once you believe that you have someone that's looking after you.
Mm-hmm.
Sometimes it's really hard, especially when somebody tells you well, this is what's going on and you don't want to accept it, you know. I struggle lots of times with that for a while. Why me? Why me? Why can't you just be nice to me? And
Mm-hmm.
but then I have to be nice to me first, I guess.
Yeah, and if somebody's nice to us, but we don't really believe we're worth it, we don't take it in all the way.
Yeah,
But you know what you're doing with yourself and with other people is so helpful. It counterbalances a little bit of all of the negative that people take in.
yeah,
Yeah, the shame and feeling like we're not good enough, and
yeah. And the kids, you know, they teach me a lot. They don't think they're teaching me, but I am getting lots from them.
mm-hmm,
Because the way I see kids, you know, the young people, the youth, they're so out there to give. They're out there, they want to give. They got
mm-hmm,
so much love. They just don't know how to do it.
right,
Nobody will take time to listen to them.
mm-hmm,
You know, sometimes, and instead of listening to them, they blame them first.
right,
Well, because they go out running around, it's their own fault, you know.
yeah,
It's not that way. It's not their own fault. It's just the way things are, you know. If we could just learn to listen to them once in a while, we might learn something from them,
mm-hmm.
because they have so much to give.
And
More
then
than,
they wouldn't feel so on their own either.
yeah,
Listen to,
yeah,
yeah,
yeah. I love the youth a lot. I think they got a lot to give. I met a whole group of young people in Toronto. There's two set or three set of young people I work with. There's one group that doing the gardening, just gardening. They go out to Midland in
mm-hmm,
Toronto somewhere and they're doing gardens, healing gardening. They're sober. They're not. They don't go out and get drunk or anything like that. They just do. They make doing growing plants, and then when they harvest everything, they give it to the shelters. I
ah,
think it's awesome when they do that.
mm-hmm,
They invited me one year. I went there as their elder, and I talked to them, and they listened. And then they gave the next year. I was awarded a book. I'm not a book, a plaque.
oh yeah,
That's one of the awards I got from that community. It's so awesome.
mm-hmm,
All healthy young people doing gardening and tobacco they were growing was so huge.
wow,
And they distribute that tobacco to First Nations people and all that, and all the shelters, and people get something out of it. They share their stuff. They take a little bit what they need for themselves,
mm-hmm,
and then give the rest.
mm-hmm,
You know, so that's one group. Then I have another group who is working on doing sweat lot in the Humble River. That's another group I work with. There's a few of them there, and they know how to build sweat lodges now, and they do their own healing work with each other now. And I go see them when I'm in Toronto.
mm-hmm.
I'll visit all these people, and we all get connected, and I stay at their place, and I'm the oldest person in their house, and they like that about me.
Oh,
And you know,
sweet.
and then I work with other young people called Girls for Bath from up north.
Mm-hmm.
Come to Toronto, and I go work with the young girls and young people, young men and young girls, and they're learning about city and stuff like that. So then I work with another group of young people here in Thunder Bay at Feathers of Hope, and
Mm-hmm.
I have a meeting with them, and they talk about what they want and what they need to do and
Mm-hmm.
what protocols they have to follow. And so we do our own little stuff. And then the Feathers of Hope represents a lot of kids from, like they bring in kids from up north, from down, from like Sault Ste. Marie to Timmins, Ontario, to up north to Thunder Bay area, which is nice.
Mm-hmm.
We try and take maybe two from that area, two from that, you know, just different kids from,
So
and
they
then
can learn from each other and get to
yeah,
know
and
a
they become
different experience.
leaders, and they become the leaders of the Feathers of Hope
Oh, I see. In their areas,
in
right?
the areas. Yeah.
Wow, that sounds like a good organization.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I think they're doing a good job.
Hmm.
I really like that.
Well, and they get to know each other and can support each other.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and they know the healthy people that likes to do healthy stuff.
Right.
It's not totally like, oh, there's nothing left to do, you know.
Yeah.
What I often say is, okay, 60 scoops happen. I saw it happen.
Yeah.
My village got emptied, but 60 scoops came to me. The residential school came to me at my home in my village. I
Yes.
didn't have to go to residential school to be treated the way I got treated
Yeah.
when everybody was taken away.
Yeah.
It
And
was
then the people who came back.
themselves did that to me.
Yeah. Yeah.
And if anybody wants to say, well, you didn't make it to the residential school, well, I had one right in my house.
Yeah. Exactly. Yeah.
I
And
witnessed all this stuff.
and all the trauma of the people who did return and
Yeah. And
yeah.
the people's kids
Yeah.
that I had to babysat their little kids because they lost their babysitters.
Yeah. Hmm.
So that's what I'm fighting about.
Right. Right. Well, I hope that money comes through.
And yeah, I hope so too. If I don't get to see it, that's okay.
Yeah.
But, you know,
But it's important too, though.
yeah, it's important to be recognized.
It is. Yeah.
Well, I mean, that it didn't just happen. I mean, I'd like to see people get something out of it. The ones that got taken away, and those ones weren't even recognized,
Right.
you know,
Hmm.
some of them.
Yeah. The pain happened regardless, but it's good to be acknowledged and to have that recognized.
Yeah.
Yeah. That helps on some level.
Oh, definitely.
Well, thank you so much for meeting with me. This has been really
Yeah.
interesting.
It was
Yeah.
really nice talking with you, and I hope you have a beautiful, pleasant day.
Go to kilobicenter.com, Radical Recovery Summit, for access to the interviews. You can watch them free online, or you could purchase an all-access pass. kilobicenter.com.